All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mags and Slabs. Got a new podcast episode out tonight. We're going to discuss some different topics in the sports magazine and other magazine world. I am Brad from Sports Magazine and History. I've got Mike here with us.
Hey guys,
And Mike, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Always looking forward to chatting about mags. So ready
Yeah,
to
for
do it.
sure. For those who are joining us live, feel free to hop in the chat, ask us any questions as we go along. We will try to address them throughout the flow as we discuss our different topics. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. Mike, why don't you lead us off with our first topic tonight?
As some of you may have noticed, and you go onto the CGC website and expect to look at the census under the resources. Um, when you look up Sports Illustrated and you go into that directory, you're greeted with an error message, basically, that reads something like directory is down or page is down, I believe, or has moved. So this is the first time I've experienced this, and um, I thought maybe, all right, they're doing some improvements. Maybe it'll be up shortly, but it's been about a week since I first noticed this, I believe. And I've checked other directories for different publications, like Slam, for instance, and that is completely operational. I don't know if there's any other publications that are affected, but certainly the Sports Illustrated directory is affected by it.
Yeah, for sure. So um I just hit a button. I'm not sure if the live stream started correctly right whenever we launched, but I just confirmed that it is for sure running now. So um if anybody is on the chat, just shoot us a message and let us know that you're seeing and hearing us okay. But yeah, just real quick, all we've touched on so far is, as Mike just mentioned, that the CGC census has been down for a while as far as the Sports Illustrated magazines go. So I'm actually gonna kind of slide my screen over here and show the people what you're talking about, Mike. Um, you go to the census and you click Sports Illustrated, and we're basically getting this. The page no longer exists, which is a little bit concerning. But I actually had one of the viewers on my channel um, leave me a comment yesterday, and he said that he had spoken with CGC support about this issue and that they were aware of it and that they expected to have it fixed within a couple days. So, take that for what it's worth. But we did also want to show that there are a couple workarounds in the meantime where you
Brad,
still can.
before
Yeah,
you
go
go
ahead.
on, do we know if the do we know that it's working for everybody on the live stream?
I think that it is.
Okay, sorry.
I No, you're good. I pulled it up on my phone, and it looks like it's rolling. So
Oh, great.
um
Yeah.
but yeah, there are a couple ways that you guys can still access some pop reports in the meantime until this gets fixed. So I wanted to show that to you. Number one is, if you're wanting to look up some pop reports of your specific magazines, you can go to your submissions page and pull up any of your orders that you put in. And when you do that, it's got links. Now, I think this only works on the web version. I don't think this works on the mobile from what I've seen. But click on the link to that specific magazine. It's going to pull up that cert page. And if you're specifically wanting to look at the pop count for that magazine, you can scroll down to the bottom, and I'll click this link right here, and voila. So the census is still there. It does still exist, but it's kind of a workaround to get there. Thank you, Matthew. Matthew says he's got us loud and clear, so we're good.
Excellent.
So that's one workaround right there, is if you have submissions and you want to find a specific one. But another option could be, you can just use the cert lookup to look up anyone that you want. So I'm just going to type in on eBay, let's say Michael Jordan CGC Sports Illustrated, because I know I'll get tons of returns on that one. And let's find one that's looks like it's got a good photo where we're going to be able to see what that cert number is. So I'll zoom in on this Michael Jordan, and let's see here. What you could do is, well, heck, they've even got it right here, so that's even easier. You could pull up the cert number for whatever copy you find of the issue that you're looking for, and then go to what I usually do is I just type in CGC lookup in my search bar, and it's this very first option right here. Type that cert number right here. So with that, Michael, what was it? It is 420 4238. Go ahead and type this in 4238 and then 029013 029013. And so this should pull me up to the page for that Michael Jordan. And yeah, there it is. And I can click this link right here to see the census for that specific issue. So there's a little workaround. Just you got to work a little bit harder, but if you can find a copy of the specific issue that you're looking for, a copy that's already been graded, just search that cert number and you can still see the pop reports for now.
So, Brad, you said that you were told that this should be back up and running in a couple of days. Did they say that this is due to them making updates of any sort, or is it just down for some reason?
No, and I wasn't told personally. It was someone who left a comment because they had commented on one of my videos a couple days ago, and they're like, "Hey, do you know what's going on with the CGC website?" And then they responded back. So here's what the comment. It looks like it was from Ross, and he said, "The lady from CGC got back with me again today. She said it will be a few more days until it gets fixed." That's all I know. So
Well, I'm curious to see what it looks like when it comes back up. I'm guessing it's going to be exactly the same, but
yeah, I think so too. I have a feeling it's more of a
yeah.
glitch than an update.
What I did notice is that the first when you go into Sports Illustrated, um, there's two Sports Illustrated links actually, and one of them is that I think if you just go through the resources the old school way, yeah,
Oh,
the not Musa.
oh, I know what that is.
That's the Chinese version, isn't it?
I don't think it's the Chinese
Oh,
version.
what is that? Is that
No, no, I know exactly what that is. Wow, I hadn't seen that yet, Mike. That's almost a little bit of a spoiler alert for me for one of my upcoming videos. That's funny. Nope, that is not a Chinese version, but it is
okay? What
another
is this?
version. It is another version of Sports Illustrated. I'm I got
You're gonna keep
I,
that to
I
yourself?
I'm gonna keep that one in a little bit. Yeah, because I've already got a video recorded and scheduled to come out with a bunch of magazines that I got graded. And yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's interesting.
I had not seen that in there. I mean, to me, I don't I wish it's not China, but it's basically another version of
It
Sports
kills
Illustrated.
me. It kills me that Sports Illustrated China doesn't bring you to all the Sports Illustrated China listings. Instead, you have
Yeah,
to go through the regular Sports Illustrated listing.
I think you were the one that pointed that out to me. Because there was quite a while where several of us were like, "Man, where in the world?" We had some Sports Illustrated
Right?
Chinas graded, and we had no idea where they were. And then, yeah, you did some nice investigative work to find that they were actually within. They're like hidden within this Sports Illustrated. Well, of course, they're not working like we talked about, but
Yeah.
they're hidden in there amongst all the normal U.S. copies.
Yeah, they're hidden. Well, they're at the top, but they're not labeled as anything specific that you would know that they're the China version.
Right.
Yeah, kind of interesting that they decided to go that route.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure what exactly they're doing with their labeling, but um, it's all good.
They've made a lot of interesting decisions over the years.
That's one thing I'd like to see. You know, if they could get a collector to come in who is specifically knowledgeable about the Sports Illustrated side, I really think that someone could help them clean up a lot of their
Oh,
labeling
yeah.
and census. I mean, there's a ton of things in the census that I've just noticed, like little things that could and probably should be cleaned up, but CDC just probably isn't really aware of them or doesn't know about it. And that's something I'd really like to see over the next year or two, is if they could work on
Yeah.
cleaning some of that up and getting it a little more standardized almost.
Yeah, I really wish they would as well. One of the things that we're going to get to soon is, I guess the slam reprints weren't handled correctly. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
there's some mess in the census that shouldn't be there.
yeah, and while we're talking about the census, one thing I would love to hear feedback from on any of our viewers or listeners is if anyone has ever had success um, whenever they crack and resubmit a slab. Has anyone ever successfully been able to get CGC to remove the previous one off of the census? Because for me personally, I have cracked and resubmitted a couple, and I tried to reach out to CGC and sent them like the pictures of the labels from the old ones, and in hopes that they would take those off of the census just to make it more accurate. And I couldn't get any response, and I tried more than once. So I'm curious if other people have found any successful ways of getting that done.
That's disappointing too. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully they'll change that.
So, okay. But yeah, that's a quick one, but obviously we like to talk about things that are going on at the moment. And that's something that seems to be plaguing us collectors right now, is this little, hopefully temporary outage of the Sports Illustrated census. But Mike, you mentioned to me that a bunch of other publications are working, right?
Seemingly, yeah.
Like what you said you were
Slam,
able to get Slam to work.
yeah.
So I haven't even looked at that. Let's just take a real quick look at this and see if Slam is pulling up. And Slam, of course, has been owned by multiple.
Yeah.
They've changed hands multiple times, but yeah,
That's
you're
another
right.
thing, by the way, and I think I mentioned this to you long back in the day. I wish it would be by title, and they had a column that said the publisher within, as opposed to having to like do some of this guesswork, like which publication was this issue in at the time, etc.
Yeah, if there was another column here that had like years,
Sure.
and then it just said, like next to Peterson Company, 1993 to '01, and then Source Center Link was '01 to '04, whatever. Because yeah, these aren't always in order chronologically. And
No,
if you have a slam, you're right. Yeah, I often am having to click through every one of these to be like, okay, which one is my copy in?
right.
So okay. Well, speaking of slam, it's a nice little segue. Um, our next topic is going to be talking about slam. And Mike, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with that one?
Okay. So Slam was started in 1994. Their vision was to combine basketball with a growing hip hop culture. Like this was something that the publication saw as a growing kind of marriage between the two, and they really wanted to distinguish themselves and I guess go in this direction where they were really able to illustrate that. They did a great job of that from the get go. Um, their first cover with Larry Johnson doing, a great slam dunk. And they have like this kind of more in your face kind of visuals. Um, they let's see, they have all sorts of different players. I think that they thought would really depict like both who was like hot in basketball at the time, but also kind of reflected the culture that they were trying to promote. I'm going to pass it back to you, Brad, because like you have a lot of great information on the history of the magazine itself.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we talk about Sports Illustrated and how when they launched in '54, it took a while for them to kind of hit their stride, and they were putting a bunch of things on the cover that, we today just think is really odd and don't seem collectible, and more just like trying to cater towards rich white folks, if we're just going to be blunt about it. But it took them over a decade to find their identity. But Slam really seems like they found their identity and hit their stride from issue number one. I think if you look at Slam throughout the years, their kind of message and what they try to portray has been pretty consistent all throughout. And like you said, I think they were basically mixing basketball with hip hop. I mean, I think they were really looking at the Source and Vibe magazine, and they were using them as kind of inspiration, but then mixing hoops in with it. And I think another thing is that Sports Illustrated, especially as it went on into this 80s and 90s, Sports Illustrated focused so heavily on the superstar and the cover athlete. But and Slam, like you mentioned, they had a certain type of person they were looking to highlight on their cover as well. But I think as a whole, their magazine really highlighted the sport of basketball in general. They were more for the casual reader, and they were highlighting a lot more high school guys and street ball guys, and just whereas sometimes Sports Illustrated, even past the 50s and 60s, still felt a little uppity or snobby, or Slam was never like that. Slam was like, hey, this is for everybody. We're going to do what's cool. We're going to do what we think is hip. And basketball just really meshed right into that hip hop scene. Allen Iverson was huge into that, and some of those other guys. So I think Slam, as far as collectability, is super underrated, and it's probably my favorite publication other than Sports Illustrated to collect.
Yeah, it's one of mine as well. Some of the covers I think are just really fun. They allow themselves to get really creative. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Sport Magazine in the 70s, where they got some art direction that they decided to get a little bit more, outside the box, a little bit more creative. Slam seems to feel more at liberty to do that, where Sports Illustrated still kind of has a little bit of like almost kind of like corporate feel to it in a way, for lack of a better term, maybe. A little bit more rigid, where Slam feels like they can get a little bit more edgy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you were talking about how they had a certain type of, athlete that they were wanting to put on the cover, who would kind of portray what they were wanting to do, the in your face type thing. And it's funny because I was actually reading about a story where it was talking about that real classic cover from 96 that had the 96 draft class on it. It was Kobe's first Slam cover. Also had Ray Allen and Marcus Camby. I think Steve Nash was on there, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, some of those guys. And so the story was that Slam, they got that cover shoot at like the rookie transition program. Like the NBA will put on these programs at the beginning, before the season starts, to try and help get these rookies geared up and acclimated for what to expect. And so one of those programs was going on, and they let Slam come, but they told them, they said, listen, they said, you have 90 seconds to shoot these guys as they're leaving the building and walking to lunch. And that was all they had. And so they were like, real stressed out, trying to get it together. And they had their list, like, okay, these are the 12 or 10 rookies from this class that we really want. Iverson was one that they really wanted.
Can I share my screen to show this cover?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll stop my share. Iverson was one that they really wanted, but the first guy to walk out, I can't remember his name, but it was like, I think they said he was like the number 11 or 12 pick, and he was some white goofy guy, didn't end up going on to have much of an NBA career, but they were like having to make up an excuse to get him to leave, because they knew they didn't want him on the cover. And he did. He walked away, and then they got the guys that they wanted, minus Iverson. They were really bummed that Iverson didn't happen to walk out there at that time, so he couldn't get on that cover.
Oh, that's right. He's not on there. Are
Yeah,
you yeah, there we go. Excellent. Yeah, I didn't notice that until now. You're absolutely right. He's not on that cover. And he
yeah,
is definitely part of that incredible class. Man, there's some great players in that class.
there really are. Yeah, Stephon Marbury.
Yeah,
Who else am I
Kobe, Ray
forgetting?
Allen. Um,
Oh, Jermaine
got
O'Neal.
Jermaine
Yeah,
O'Neal's in there,
I
Steve
mean,
Nash.
almost every player on this cover was like an all-star caliber player.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
maybe
Abdul
Samaki
Rahim.
Walker probably didn't make any all-star teams, but he was a
Yeah.
starter. I mean, same with Kerry Kittles. I mean, these were good players. John Wallace. I don't know who John Wallace is.
Actually, I don't either. Antoine Walker was definitely a big deal at the time.
Yeah, he was an all-star. Yeah, this is a
Yeah.
great cover.
Yeah, it is. It's really collectible. I noticed the price on these have seemingly gone up a little bit as of late, as
So
of me trying deciding to want to add it to my collection is when I've noticed it.
yeah, I mean, there were obviously way fewer copies of Slam printed than there were Sports Illustrated. Although, Sports Illustrated was more of a subscription based magazine, whereas Slam had more newsstand sales. So I think even though some of these Slam covers you don't see a ton and they can be hard to find, I think the ones you do find more often are newsstands as opposed to subscription, which is like the total opposite of when you're hunting for Sports Illustrateds. Um, I lost my train
Right.
of thought on what else I was going to say about them.
Well, you had shared information about Slam in one of your own videos, and one of the things that you mentioned is that Sports Illustrated is primarily a subscription publication, where the newsstands are the large minority. Slam magazine is the opposite, where it's largely a newsstand publication with some people subscribing. However, many less Slam magazines were printed in general. Thus, it's still somewhat difficult to find newsstands, even of Slam.
Yeah. And one of our viewers in the chat mentioned that the issues are very condition sensitive, which is
Yes.
totally true.
Yes.
It is tough to pop a high grade on a Slam, especially some of these real collectible ones from the 90s.
That's so true. Sometimes I will do a search just on eBay to try to land a specific issue. And of course, I'm only looking for newsstand, and I might find a handful of them. There's always something wrong. There's always like, a messed up corner, or sometimes the poster's not there, or we've talked about in the past how like the spine for these is the glued spine, the thicker spine, and it's really prone to like rips and, I don't know what else, different defects. And also, I believe like just the distribution, like for whatever reason, they got banged up very easily.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people even today complain about the the shipping and the handling of the Slam magazines. And it's like, even if because now you can order Slam issues directly from their website, and
Yes.
most of the time when people are getting them, they're already beat up. I mean, you've already got, if you want to get it graded, you've already got no shot at a 9.8 because it's just arriving with damage. But it's like the covers are just they're like a little heavier, maybe a little glossier, and I don't know what it is, but like you said, it's like almost every issue that you find on the searches online, it's like it's got the corner creased or bent, or it's got a little tear. Like they
Hmm.
just I think I even said in one of my videos, like I kind of came up with my own personal like grading scale for Slam, where I'm almost adjusting it down 2 notches from a Sports Illustrated, where to me a 9.4 almost feels like a 9.8, and like a 9.0 almost feels like a 9.4, just because it's so hard. I think I don't remember what the stats were, but when I did my video on Slam, I think I even looked at all of the CGC data, and there were
Yes.
like less than 10 or less than 20,
12.
9.8, something like, there were 12. Okay.
12.
There,
Yeah.
there you go. It's just so hard to pop a high
And the
grade in
the
them.
average score. for Slam magazine was 8.1, and during that same year spread of 94 through, I think he did through 2000 maybe, the average score for Sports Illustrateds in those years was 8.9.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big difference. Anyways,
Um,
I mean, they're awesome covers and they are super fun to collect. The condition thing does, make it a little bit tricky sometimes, but when you get one in great shape, it's that much cooler.
yeah, and we talked in one of our podcast episodes about collectible athletes who are never on a Sports Illustrated cover. And I love that about Slam. There's a handful of really, really fun and good basketball players who were never on a Sports Illustrated but have a Slam cover. Actually, you've got one on the screen right now. T-Mac is a big one. He was never on a US version of Sports Illustrated, but man, he was ridiculous there for a while, and so he's got a couple cool Slam covers.
And that's a great cover if you want to collect T-Mac. Also, I think Stephon Curry's first Slam magazine is much cooler than his first Sports Illustrated cover. I know the Sports Illustrated cover is a variant and rare and collectible, but his Slam cover is, I think, just a cooler cover. Um,
Steph Curry's first Slam cover, in my opinion, is super underrated. Talk about a slept on issue as far as potential value and collectability. Um, I think that's a big one that nobody talks about.
yep, I love this All-Star LeBron. This is actually right before I think he was to go to his first All-Star game. Or
Yes.
actually, no.
I think
When was this? This was in
I,
2003.
I
Oh,
think
I'm
it was
sorry.
right before his NBA debut.
You're right. You're right. And this is actually a Michael Jordan jersey, isn't it?
Oh, it might be. That's pretty cool.
I think that's the situation. Yeah.
So I see a couple comments on the chat talking about like the gold editions and stuff like that. That's something
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to ask you about, Mike, and get your opinion. So, Slam over the past, I don't know when they started it, probably within the past 8 years or so. They'll put out these serialed versions, like variations of their covers. So obviously there's the traditional cover, but then they'll do limited print runs of, there you go, like a gold edition. So that one, only had 94 copies. And I know they do like purple editions and stuff like that. That's something that we've never seen Sports Illustrated do, to my knowledge. It's something that is very common in the sports card world. And it's also something that it seems to me like a lot of the sports magazine collectors like, because I know like that Wembanyama sold out like that. It sounded like from some of the chatter in our Facebook groups, people were trying to go
Yes.
pick them up and they were already gone.
I
So
just missed it,
what
unfortunately.
what are your thoughts on Slam doing this with these limited print runs and the different variations?
I think it's cool. I like it. Um, I you have to kind of be, in the know to get in on these. I mean, 94 is not a lot. Then in some cases they do the black metal to 60, I think, as well. So that's just another tier. Yeah, there's like parallels, between what they're doing there and what sports cards do with their different parallels. And that's proven to be extremely well received in the card world. I think it's kind of a step in a cool direction personally. I think Slam's the perfect publication to do it, to start it.
Yeah, Slam seems to be maybe the best avenue out there to bring more sports card collectors into the magazine world, because like you said, Slam is doing this with the limited print runs, and like Tony said in the chat, I mean 94 copies of a magazine, that's absolutely nothing. That's
Yeah,
when normally there's, gosh, I don't know. I mean, easily thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, and even millions maybe with Sports Illustrated. But then also, Slam, Panini has
yeah,
been putting out the cards over the past few years with Slam covers, and those from what I've seen have been really popular because the card collectors realize like, dang, these these covers are really cool and they look really cool on sports cards. So I think some of those parallels and those crosses are really neat, and it's a good way to like I said, maybe draw some of those card collectors in. So yeah, I see you're pulling up some of the pictures of those cards.
Yeah. Yeah. So they mimic some of the more collectible and popular slam covers, basically.
I remember it's been about 2 years now since I've bought any sports cards, but right there towards the end, I mean, it may have even been the very last box of sports cards I ever bought before I totally switched into the sports magazines. But I opened a box of Panini hoops, and I got a LaMelo Ball slam refractor card, and I'm like, dang, this thing's sick, and it I think comps it was going for like $50 at the time, which is a pretty solid sale for a card. So I think those slam cards are really awesome.
Yeah. I think they pair great with the actual magazine too, if you're into that sort of thing.
And I'll be honest, I guess you could say I'm coming around a little bit on the limited print runs and the variations. My first initial instinct was that I didn't like it. I didn't like that they were doing it, because that was one thing I've always liked better about collecting magazines is the rarity, like with the newsstands that we collect. I mean, it's legit scarcity. Like there's just not many left out there. Whereas I felt like with sports cards, it was becoming really watered down with all of these variations and all these parallels and all these serial numbers, and it just felt like manufactured rarity to me. And that was one thing that was kind of starting to turn me off a little bit. But as time goes, I think with sports magazines, it feels a lot more finite than sports cards. Like sports cards can easily just keep going and going, and there's always going to be plenty of product to make and put out there. Whereas with sports magazines, you've already seen such a lull and such a dip in new printed publications coming out, because printed magazines just aren't as popular as they once were. Sports Illustrated isn't even owned by Time Inc. anymore. They've gone from weekly, then they went to bi-weekly, now they're monthly. Who knows how much longer Sports Illustrated will even survive. So to me, now the more that I think about it, Slam doing this with the limited print runs and the serial editions, the gold editions, that actually maybe creates a little bit of excitement in the modern issues. Whereas if they weren't doing that, there's not a lot of excitement out there, and there's definitely not a lot of variety out there with new and modern releases.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And we were talking about how collecting the magazines is lacks the prospect value in it, where cards, that seems to be such a life, the lifeblood of it in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
So another thing that I want to mention that you mentioned was the reprints on these
Yes.
on these Slam magazines. So what they've done is they have taken a bunch of their real collectible covers, and they are selling reprint versions of them. And there for a while, there were a lot of people on eBay who, well, I don't know if there were a lot of people, but there were at least several people on eBay who were really taking advantage of that. And they were buying these reprint editions directly from the Slam website, and they were getting them graded, and they were getting 9.8s, and then they were selling them for pretty good money. I saw multiple sell for over $1,000, and it was because the buyers did not realize that they were reprints. And so for those
One right
watching,
there.
if you haven't seen my videos where I've talked about this, this is the way to tell the difference. The originals have that barcode. This is an actual original Kobe Slam magazine that I don't know what year this one came out, probably, well, after he won 3 titles, probably in the around 02 or something like that. There's the barcode, but this one is a reprint. because it does not have a barcode. That is the indicator. And actually, on this specific CGC slab, you can see that they did not list anywhere that it was a reprint. However, I did notice today when I was looking at some of these, and Mike, I don't know if you've seen this, but they have started listing it. Have you seen that?
They started putting that on the label.
They've started putting reprint on the label.
Oh, that's great news.
I think they may have heard us loud and clear, because yes, oh shoot, I know that I saw at least a couple that literally had the word reprint in the listing title, and then I saw that it had it on the actual label of the slab as well. I was hoping I could find one here real quick, but
I know
yeah,
they
they
can't change the physical label once it's returned to the customer and it's out in the wild now. Um, but it'd be great if they would change it in the census
I agree.
or
I
even
wish
in the
they
cert
would.
number.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, I was hoping that I could find oh, actually, I think if I were to sort this real quick by highest price, I think that was where I maybe saw some of these. These are all traditionals. You can see the barcodes. I don't
But
know. It's okay. I don't have
you
to
gotta look
find an
at.
exact example, but it was basically like right here,
Hmm.
kind of on the left of the label. It clearly said reprint. So
Oh,
that's
great.
good. That's encouraging.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to mention as far as Slam Magazine, Mike?
No, we kind of bounced around, but we pretty much covered all the main points, I think.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, our next topic is one we haven't done before, but we talk a lot about how we love the history and we love the stories that go with a lot of these covers, and that's one of the most fun parts of collecting these sports magazines. So we thought we would do a specific topic on cover stories, and we have each selected three covers, and we're going to talk about kind of the stories behind those covers. So, Mike, do you want me to lead or do you want to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay, I've got my screen shared, so I'll go ahead and do my first one. So I know you're shocked by this, Mike, because I I
I
talk
love
all the
it.
time about how I'm a Kobe guy and I'm not a huge LeBron fan, but I decided to do LeBron's first cover as my first cover story. So I'm going to share some info about this cover and kind of how it unfolded. The writer of this article, the chosen one, was Grant Wall. So Grant Wall was a pretty well-known Sports Illustrated writer for a while. He actually just passed away in Qatar recently. It was kind of big news. He passed away during the World Cup. But he was actually the guy who wrote this art. He was primarily during his tenure at SI. Started off with basketball, but then he was the big soccer writer. But he actually went and visited LeBron at his high school, and he kind of told LeBron, "Hey, we're wanting to do this article on you. It might even be a cover story." And LeBron told him that he was actually going to the Cavaliers game that night with some of his friends. So Grant Wall asked if he could come along, and LeBron said yes, that'd be fine. So they went to the Cavaliers game that night. And before they went to the game, Grant came to his house, and he said that LeBron actually had a Sports Illustrated cover framed on his wall, but it was photoshopped. It was photoshopped with a picture of
Hmm.
him, of LeBron, and the
Mhm.
caption said, "Is he the next Michael Jordan?" So I thought that was pretty cool. And so they all drive to this Cavaliers game, and guess who the Cavaliers were playing that night? So remember, this is 2002, and the Cavaliers were playing the Washington Wizards, who of course had
Michael
Michael
Jordan.
Jordan at the time. So in that game that Grant Wall and LeBron's buddies are all there attending and watching, Michael actually catches an inbound pass with 1.6 seconds left from Popeye Jones, and he hits a game-winning buzzer beater from right inside the 3-point line to win the game by 1 against the Cavaliers. After the game, LeBron goes into the Wizards locker room and he's talking with Michael, and Michael is actively recruiting him to try and sign with Nike because there was a huge battle at the time between Nike and Adidas over who was going to sign LeBron. So Michael is recruiting him, trying to persuade him to sign with Nike. Grant Wall is there with him in the locker room, but he's literally like kind of trying to stand off to the side and act inconspicuous because he's like trying to cover up his media credentials because Michael at this time still won't talk with Sports Illustrated. So he was like terrified that Michael would see him and realize he was with Sports Illustrated and, kick him out or stop talking to him. So anyway, he gets this great story, doesn't know if it's going to be on the cover. The editors at Sports Illustrated were actually really hesitant at first to put it on the cover. And the very first person they were thinking of was Felipe Lopez, who had been a young basketball phenom, I think around 93, that they had put on the cover. I think they put him on the cover when he was like a freshman or an incoming freshman for St. John's. And it just didn't really end up panning out. So, they were kind of timid as far as, LeBron was a high school junior, putting him on the cover.
Wasn't he the first cover subject on the cover that had not gone to at least college yet?
No, I do not believe that is true.
Oh, okay.
I know for sure there was a guy named Rick Mount in the 70s who was on the cover. And I was actually reading about Rick Mount because I thought about doing the Rick Mount as one of my cover stories. And it mentioned that there were a couple other high school people that they had put on there. So there had been a few precedents before LeBron. But another thing, we were talking about Slam. Slam had printed a feature article about LeBron when he was a sophomore in high school. It was in their September 2001 issue. And whenever Sports Illustrated put LeBron on the cover, Slam was like devastated and majorly regretted that they had not done so first. And that's actually why, if you see LeBron's first Slam cover, he's on there with Sebastian Telfair. The whole reason that Slam put LeBron on the cover with Telfair is because they were embarrassed that they hadn't put him on the cover before Sports Illustrated, and they didn't want it to look like they were imitating the Sports Illustrated cover.
Right.
So,
and
anyway,
Telfair was a big deal at the time as well.
He was for sure. But I think, like you and I have talked about, I don't know that I ever recall, even Wembanyama, anyone having as much hype coming into the league as what LeBron did back then.
Yeah, it was otherworldly at the time. Okay, I'm going to share mine. So I'm talking about Muhammad Ali on the cover of Esquire, April 4th, 1968. The subtitle reads, "The Passion of Muhammad Ali." This cover is a perfect storm of religion, sport, and race all colliding at one time here. This was in 1968 amid the civil rights movement, Vietnam War. This also happens to be the same day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. At the time, Muhammad Ali was really getting it from all directions. 2 years earlier, or 4 years earlier, I believe, he had changed his name to Muhammad Ali from Cassius Clay for religious reasons as he turned Muslim. And I think at the time there's a lot of mainstream kind of reaction to that. He had denied not honoring his draft to Vietnam War. He didn't believe in the war, so he was not going, and he was facing legal issues revolving around that. He also had his belt stripped from him, his heavyweight title stripped from him at that time too. So he had a lot going on and a lot coming at him. And he actually, George, I believe it's Lois is his name, the art director for Esquire, was also a friend of Muhammad Ali. He had this vision of depicting him as the martyr, Saint Sebastian, the biblical martyr who died for his faith. And he shared this idea with Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali got it. He thought it was a great concept, but he told him, I can't be portrayed as a Christian. I'm Muslim. So George Lewis, the art director, desperately wanted to see this happen. He wanted to have this, come to fruition. So he asked him, what would it take for you to be okay with this? And Muhammad Ali told him, if you can get the okay from Elijah Muhammad, then it is okay by me. So he was on the phone with Elijah Muhammad and explained the situation, and Elijah Muhammad agreed that this would be a strong message. So they went through with this and did the photo shoot. And once Elijah Muhammad gave the okay, Muhammad Ali was all in. This is showing you the Saint Sebastian portrayal here that it's mimicking. In the photo shoot, they used actual physical arrows that they attached to Muhammad Ali. So it would, so it would really translate in the photograph. And Muhammad Ali apparently really kind of fed into this and started, posing, in the way that George Lewis talks about it. He said that he could see him kind of voicing his kind of like his grief and his pain that he's been dealing with through this photo shoot. And when this was actually, put out in the magazine, of course, it became, just, a huge firestorm from the publication itself. And since then has become kind of iconic and one of the more iconic magazine covers of any genre of all time.
What I love about this one is that, around this time, Ali was so persecuted, so condemned, for his stance on the war and for his, conversion into Islam and all that stuff. But then went on, in the next decade, 5, whatever years later, 8 years later, to be, really easily the most popular athlete on the entire face of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very interesting how that, over time, his perception aged differently.
Yeah. Good choice, Mike.
Yep.
All right. Let's pull mine back up. And my next one is Johnny Padres. All right. So I got a little story about this one. So this is the 1956 Sportsman of the Year, Johnny Padres. So not a well-known player today. This was actually the second Sportsman of the Year that Sports Illustrated issued. The first one in 1955 was Roger Bannister, which is still a pretty well-known name. Of course, he was the first person to break the 4-minute barrier of the mile. But 56 Padres, Johnny Padres. So he was a 4-time All-Star. So he was a good player. He won 148 games as a pitcher, primarily with the Dodgers. But what's interesting is this year that he won Sportsman of the Year in 56, he only went 9-10 that season. However, the reason that he won it is because the Dodgers won the World Series, and he pitched 2 complete game victories in that World Series, including a shutout in Game 7, and he won the first ever World Series MVP. That was the first year that they did the World Series MVP, and he won that. He was actually gifted a red Corvette car for being the winner of that. But the most interesting part of this, and the reason I chose this as my story, is that Johnny Padres was not supposed to be Sportsman of the Year. He was a last-minute substitute, and here's why. So in the summer of 1955, there was a racehorse named Nashua. And Nashua was the betting favorite by far to win the 1955 Kentucky Derby. But Nashua finished second in the Kentucky Derby to a horse named Swaps. Okay, now obviously after the Kentucky Derby, whoever the winner is, then there's all sorts of anticipation about the potential for a Triple Crown. Well, Swaps, the upset winner who had beaten Nashua, was blocked from being able to race in the Preakness or the Belmont Stakes, so was not able to go for the Triple Crown because Swaps's owner, Rex Ellsworth, had not paid the $100 entry fees for Swaps to be eligible in both of those races. So Swaps couldn't do the Preakness or the Belmont. Nashua, who had been upset in the Derby, went on to win both of those. So Nashua won the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. And afterwards, Sports Illustrated wrote an article suggesting that the two horses should basically have like a private race, because Swaps had kind of ruined Nashua's chance at the Triple Crown and then didn't even compete in the other two races. And so both sides accepted that. Sports Illustrated broke the story, and then it was a huge deal on August 31st, 1955. They had a private race. It was a mile and a quarter long of a race. It was held at Chicago's Washington Park. Swaps versus Nashua. The winner was going to take home $100,000. And Nashua, who had been upset at the Derby, won the rematch. So kind of making Nashua like an unofficial Triple Crown winner. So Sports Illustrated had decided after that, because once again, that was like huge deal, huge publicity. Nashua's owner, Bill Woodward, was going to be named the Sportsman of the Year. And so that also just goes back to the fact of, gosh, Sports Illustrated was so weird in those early years. Like we would never think about a horse owner being named Sportsman of the Year, but that's what they were doing back then. But they decided
I'm sorry about it. Wasn't 1954 Sportsman of the Year a canoe?
Oh, I don't know about that. I thought 55 Roger
that was a bad joke.
Bannister.
That was a bad joke. Continue.
No, hold on. You got to explain that joke to me, Mike.
Oh, I always say like the first handful of issues were like
okay, I got you. Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good point. The first Sportsman of the Year should have been like a yacht boat or a croquet set or something. I got you. I apologize.
Yeah. Sorry that I shouldn't have bothered you with that. Continue.
No, you're good. So Bill Woodward, the owner of Nashua, was going to be the named Sportsman of the Year, but the very morning that the editors were planning to approve and close the cover with Bill Woodward, it was reported that Woodward had been shot and killed by his wife the night before. And so the story for that was that they were attending a party for the Duchess of Windsor on October 30th, 1955. Woodward and his wife returned to their home in Oyster Bay, New York. Both were really nervous because there were reports of a prowler roaming around the nearby estates. And so they both went to, I guess they had separate bedrooms. They both went to separate bedrooms with loaded shotguns. A few hours later, the wife, Anne, heard a noise and went into the hallway with her gun where she saw a shadowy figure, and she thought it was the prowler. She fired the gun. It was her husband, Bill. And it turned out to be this big story. Like they arrested a guy named Paul Worse who admitted that he had actually been there trying to break into their house. And then people were trying to claim that the wife, Anne, had deliberately planned for him to be there so she could plan on, shoot her husband. And it was this big deal. Life magazine actually titled it as the shooting of the century. And so anyway, their Sportsman of the Year died. He was shot by his wife, and at the last minute, they were frantic. They made the snap decision to make Johnny Padres the Sportsman of the Year, and they found the only color close-up that they had of him to use for the cover, and that's what we have right here.
Wow.
So there we go.
Yeah, so many of these have such stories behind them.
Let me stop my share. All right, there you go.
May 29th, 1995, Sports Illustrated, Dennis Rodman cover. Rare bird. Okay, photographer John McDonough. Originally, the cover that they had in mind for this story was a shelved photo taken for Vibe magazine that depicted Dennis Rodman and then and Madonna, who would be his future girlfriend. This was scrapped because apparently Eddie Murphy was another lead story in this magazine, and Eddie Murphy rose a ruckus about this, saying, "How can I not be on the cover of this issue?" And they decided to go ahead and change it in favor of Eddie Murphy, and this was shelved. And as they were putting together the story for Sports Illustrated with that other image in mind, I guess they decided, well, Dennis Rodman is really going through this transformation, in and of itself, and that's really the interesting story here is him and how he's just such this individual. So this was in the mid 90s, 94, 95 era, where as a basketball fan, we really did see this transformation. He came from the Bad Boy Pistons, and he didn't have any tattoos at the time. His hair was not dyed. He didn't have piercings or anything like that. But around 95, all of a sudden he had all that going on. And in mid 90s, it was a big deal for a star basketball player all of a sudden to have tattoos and piercings going on and dyed hair. It was really shook up like the NBA, faithful at the time. And it was kind of shocking at first, and he was just kind of going through this moment in his life where he was kind of like coming into his own. At the time, it seemed like, oh, he's like kind of acting out, or he's like this character, but he was really just kind of finding himself. So that's what this is really depicting. In 2013, they would do another story here called Freebird, kind of playing off of that initial cover. That's my next share. But yes, so yeah, interesting cover.
Classic.
Interesting guy.
Very interesting guy. He needs to get on a cover with Kim Jong-un, his buddy.
Oh man, yeah. Dennis Rodman works in mysterious ways. He really does.
He does. He
But
does.
one thing I'll say about him, I don't agree with a lot of things that come out of his mouth, or even like, I'm not actually really a fan of his, to be honest. But he's true to like what he feels is his true self. He's also one of the great rebounders of all time by a long shot. I mean, at the time he was averaging like 18 rebounds a game, which was not common anymore. In the 90s, that was really out of the ordinary. And he self-proclaimed he made it an art, and he did. It's amazing that he was able to put up this sort of numbers for many, many years.
Yeah, some of his stat lines are hilarious. It'll be like 0 points, 25
Yeah.
rebounds.
Yeah, that's a Dennis Rodman stat line for sure.
Right.
I'm gonna bounce this back to you.
So my last one is actually not as much about the cover as the inner contents of this magazine. So this is actually the first cover for Chris Mullin, who's a Hall of Famer. He was on the Dream Team. It's also the sixth cover for Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing was actually on 7 covers in college, which, to my knowledge, from what I've seen, is the most of any collegiate athlete ever for Sports Illustrated. But here's the deal with this
I
issue.
wonder if he has more collegiate covers than he does pro covers.
He might. That's a good point. It's probably pretty close. But the thing with this issue is you can see the date was April 1st, 1985. So earlier that year in 85, the editors had realized that one of their publication dates was actually going to be on April 1st. So they called in George Plimpton, who was a legendary longtime Sports Illustrated writer. He appears on Ken Burns' baseball documentary. But they called him in to do a story about various like sports related April Fool's pranks. But as they started working on it, they kind of realized that they were all like, you kind of had to be there type moments. So they then came up with the idea to just let Plimpton come up with his own April Fool's joke. And so that was where he came up with the Curious Case of Sid Finch, which is the most infamous the most infamous April Fool's joke probably in magazine history. So this was kind of like a teaser here in the earlier parts of the magazine. What's it say? Are these size 14s the feet of the future in baseball? The New York Mets aren't saying much, but SI has obtained the exclusive story with the first pictures ever of an amazing individual. And then you can see right here, page 58, the curious case of Sid Finch. So he comes up with this story, and the guy's real name is Siddhartha Finch, but he goes by Sid. He's a philosophy student from Tibet, and he plays the French horn, and he throws a baseball 168 miles per hour. And what's really cool is this is the lead of the story. They actually, and I wish they would have made it a little more obvious, but the first letter in every word of this lead actually spells out happy oh shoot, happy April Fool's Day. Oh, what's it say? Happy April Fool's Day. Yeah, Happy April Fool's Day is what it is.
Right.
It's pretty cool. So they actually had the New York Mets in on this. Sports Illustrated had called the president of the Mets. His name was Frank Cashin, and he agreed that he was going to play along with the prank. And tons of people fell for it. So they even had like a picture in the locker room next to Darryl Strawberry. They had a picture of this fake scouting report, said gawky, string bean type, no visible injuries, strengths, unbelievable, fastball and control. You got to see this. And then here's a picture of him playing his French horn by the ocean. Pretty cool. So like I said, this caused like a huge uproar in the following days. Like a bunch of people fell for it and thought it was legit. They even had these pictures here. Like here's pitching coach Mel Stottlemyre talking to, you know, the fake Sid Finch that actually brought this fake guy in to do the photos. He wore one boot. Here's a picture of him. And then these are some of the real, you know, I mean, Lenny Dykstra. These are some of the real Mets at the time who were all kind of in on this prank. The St. Petersburg Times actually sent an investigative reporter to the Mets training camp because they thought that it was real. And it was such a huge thing that actually George Plimpton went on to write an actual novel about it that got published 2 years later in 1987. So once again, not as much about the cover, but
Yeah.
I think that story about the inside of the magazine is pretty cool. All right, let me pass it to you for your last one.
Okay. So, January 22nd, 1981, Rolling Stone cover. John Lennon and Yoko Ono. This has maybe become one of the most iconic rock and roll photographs of all time by Annie Leibovitz. So the photo session was originally meant to promote a new joint album between Yoko and John called Double Fantasy. And when Annie Leibovitz was putting together this photo shoot, she asked both Yoko and John, I would like to kind of like illustrate your devotion and love for one another. And her idea was to have both of them nude, holding each other. And although they knew Annie Leibovitz pretty well and were pretty comfortable with her in general, Yoko wasn't actually that comfortable with derobing for the photo. And she actually said, how about I just take my shirt off? And Annie Leibovitz kind of got a different kind of feel for this direction and felt like, well, maybe it would actually be more impactful if you stay clothed and John was holding you with nude. So she felt like that direction might be actually more impactful. she did some of these photos and shared like a Polaroid with John Lennon, and John's initial reaction right away was, "This is a perfect representation of our relationship." Um, the thing about this photo shoot is that it would be um, their last his last photo shoot. For he was actually murdered hours after the photo shoot. He was actually killed later that evening in his outside of his Manhattan home. So Annie Leibovitz has these amazing photos that were really depicting like their last moments together, and like she didn't realize this in the moment, but this is what they become. She wasn't even sure what to do about this. She didn't want to exploit, the situation, but what they ended up doing was putting this cover together as a tribute, exactly or almost exactly a month later, a little bit more than a month later. For the photo shoot was on December 8th, 1980, and the cover came out January 22nd, 1981. So yeah, it's just amazing, like the circumstances that were revolved around this photo shoot, and it's since become one of the most iconic, covers of all time.
I did not know any of that story. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of amazing how it all unfolded.
Well, Mike, why don't you keep the screen and
Sure.
we can go ahead and roll into the our last topic of show and tell, and you can start it off.
Sure. Okay. So I'm sharing a new acquisition, a Barry Sanders Sports Illustrated first cover from 1990. And as a kid, Barry Sanders was my favorite football player. He was just amazing to watch. Like every time you would tune into a game, you never knew what magic you were going to see. He just had this incredible center of gravity that allowed him to do things that no player really was able to do quite like him before. He just did this really magical moves that sometimes the play would seem dead, and he would turn it into like a touchdown or a huge gain. The magazine itself is very condition sensitive, has a lot of black ink on the cover, and it's hard to get in a high grade, and the pops on these are pretty low. But it's such a great cover. He only has, I think, 3 Sports Illustrated covers. Is that right, Brad? I think so.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and this is just a cool shot of Barry. I actually had the privilege of meeting him recently at the National, where I painted a painting of him and had him sign it, and he was just the kindest, chill guy of all time. He's just really cool. Seemed really appreciative and of the painting, and thought it was really nice. And it was just a cool moment. When you get like your childhood hero to like appreciate your work is kind of a special thing. But yeah, he's definitely one of my all-time faves. So I was happy to add this to my collection.
Barry was unreal. Yeah, he was, I mean, in my opinion, in his prime, possibly the best running back ever. And if he had not retired so short, very easily, I think could have ended up even being a career rushing leader. I think he's still, he might be 4th now. I think Frank Gore just passed him, but pretty impressive for retiring at like age 30 or something.
Yeah, he was 30. I think he was only about 1,500 yards shy. So basically a year away from likely doing it, because he was, as you said, in his prime, and he just got off of a season of averaging about that, or gaining about that. And I think he has a career average of 5 yards a carry, which is not too many running backs have that going on. He stopped at 99 touchdowns, and for whatever reason, that always irked me. I wanted him to get that 100th touchdown, but he played for the Detroit Lions, so
yeah, that was rough. Who knows what he could have done if he played with a more successful team. I love Tony's comment in the chat. He said, I remember the Lions running a running play on 3rd and goal from the 9. Who would ever do that? And of course he scored.
Yeah, right. I mean,
That's funny.
so often a play would fall apart and he pulls some magic out and make something out of nothing. But yeah, he was so much fun.
And you're right, that's a really tough cover. Congrats on that 8. I've got a 7, so you've got
Mhm.
me one upped on that one.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to have this.
All right, here's my first one I will share. I've got 2 picked out, one ungraded and one graded. This is a pretty recent pickup, and this is Reggie
Ooh,
Jackson's first cover. It's a newsstand, and it is also autographed
that looks great.
by Mr. October in Silver Sharpie. I'm a sucker for Silver Sharpie. Now I will say the magazine itself is, fairly beat up. It's also got kind of hard to see. Probably won't be able to show it too well in the lighting. You can see a little bit, but it's got like a stamp on there that says "Do not remove." Um, VA Hospital Library,
Oh yeah.
Wilkes Bar, Pennsylvania, maybe something like that. So, but I'm a sucker for, or I'm really big on newsstand first covers that are autographed. I think that is a major spot in the hobby with upside. Obviously, right now we know that CGC, is kind of weird on how they handle autographs, even if they've been third party authenticated. So right now I'm just holding on to all of my my autographed issues, just waiting for that one day that, hopefully there's a better option. And I did share on a recent episode that I heard a rumor that CGC is working on eventually doing some autograph authentication, because if they're wanting to compete with PSA on the sports card side, which it seems like they're pretty serious about doing, they're almost going to have to add in an autograph authentication component. And then, the rumor I heard is that if and when they implement that, they would then look to do it on the sports magazine side as well, which I would be really pumped about. So yeah, excited with this new pickup.
That's awesome. That looks great. That's the only one I had to share. Did you have any others?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I pulled one other one out, which I've shared this on one of my videos before, but kind of cool for those who have not seen it before. This is the Jack Nicklaus first Sports Illustrated cover. It is from 1960, so Golden Bear Jack Nicklaus was on a bunch of covers, probably around 20 off the top of my head. It's a 1.8, which I almost kind of like even more. I think it's really funny.
Mhm.
There's not very many. I think whenever I got this graded, there was only like 5 or 6 1.8s in all of the Sports Illustrated database. But I think also this was one of only like 12 newsstand copies of Jack Nicklaus's first cover. So it's really rare in any condition. And I'm definitely not a grade snob. A lot of these vintage issues that are key covers, I love having a copy, period, even if it's in really bad shape. But yeah, for those of you who maybe didn't know, 1.8 is possible. Kind of funny because from 2.0 to 9.0, it goes in 0.5 increments. Then all of a sudden they throw up a 1.8 in there as a possibility. So that just tells you how beat up this one is, but it's still one that
Is there
I
anything
like a
about
lot.
there's a 1.8? Is there a 1.5 or how
Hmm.
does it go? Yeah, 1.5 and then a 1.
Yeah, there's also a
Oh, right.
0.5.
Zero and a 0.8, isn't there?
There might be a 0.8. I don't remember that for sure,
Wow,
but
they really
there
start splitting hairs at the bottom there.
but there's definitely a 0.5 because I think that's like
Yeah,
I've seen oh
comics.
gosh, there's some, yeah, comics that like are even missing a cover. I think
Hmm.
if it's missing a cover, it might be able to get a 0.5. Um, but anyway, that's what I got.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah, I think we kind of made our time, sort of.
Yeah, we're kind of getting the
Yeah,
hang of this.
yeah. We're getting there. Yeah, this one was jam-packed full of a lot of goodies. So we did a pretty good job.
Yep. All right. Well, Thank you all for tuning in and listening, and we will definitely continue with some upcoming episodes. Mike, I always enjoy talking about these different topics with you.
Yeah, as do I. Um, just a reminder that these are always put on audio podcasts as well, and this can be found on all the podcast platforms.
Yeah, I'll answer this question in the chat real quick. Tom Harrison said, "Has there ever been a 9.9 or a 10 on any sports magazines?" And we were just talking about all the possibilities on the CGC grading scale. There are 9.9s and 10s out there in the comic world. They're very rare. A 10 is literally not a single flaw on the entire magazine. A 9.9 allows for one flaw. But the answer to your question is no. As of today, or at least let me say, as of the last time I checked the database, which was probably a month ago, I think there was in the ballpark of 18,000 Sports Illustrated copies that had been graded and 0 9.9s or 10s.
And as we were saying, like Slam is probably even more unlikely to ever crack anything higher than 9.8.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Thanks again, everybody. We will see you soon, Mike. Thanks. Appreciate it. And yeah, be sure to stay tuned for the next episode.
Yep. Take care, everyone.